Good morning. I see people logging in, so we'll just give it a few more seconds before we formally commence, but lovely to see all of these numbers coming into this very important launch for Campus Engage and the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning. You're all very welcome this morning. I'm coming to you from Galway in the west of Ireland, where it's a little bit wet, but we're in good spirits. Okay, maybe I'll start. I'll start with a little welcome on behalf of Campus Engage and the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education. I warmly welcome you to the launch of our Community Engaged Learning online short course. My name is Lorraine McElrath and I'm the incoming chair of Campus Engage and director of NUI Galway's Centre for Community Engagement. I'm your MC for this event, and I was delighted to join colleagues and experts across Ireland in early 2020 to build this online opportunity. The purpose of this launch today is to make you aware of this very exciting online opportunity, to give you an understanding as to how this online course can help you embed community engaged learning within your own curriculum, and how it will help you to support your students to engage with real-world issues in partnership with community organisations. Sign up for the delivery of this course will open in late November and there are limited places available. And the course will be delivered online in early 2021. And we feel this is a significant opportunity for online and remote learning, especially during this crazy period of time. Also, a little bit of good news, this course is a free opportunity due to resources given by the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning. So we're very grateful to their support and built pro bono under the auspices of Campus Engage by a team of very committed higher education staff across Ireland. So we thank the wider higher education community for their time and support. Just a little bit about the launch format and housekeeping. We'll firstly go in a few minutes to a short video to give you a flavour of the significance of community engaged learning and its importance in terms of as a pedagogy within higher education. We'll then move to a panel, and you'll see the panel on screen. They're going to share their unique perspectives on community engaged learning, and the panelists include academics, community partners and students. And then we'll be finally joined by Dr. Terry MAGUIRE, who's the director of the National Forum. In terms of any questions you have throughout this launch, the chat box is enabled, so please feel free to place your questions into the chat box. For further information on the course, after this launch, you're invited to email Colin O'Hare after this, and he will put his email address into the chat box. And for those of you who might like to tweet about this online opportunity, you can use the username at Campus Engage, at ForumTL, and hashtag Engage Learning. But first of all, we have a message from Joe O'Brien, Minister, TD. He's Minister of State with responsibility for community development and charities at the Department of Rural and Community Development. And this will follow with a short video to formally launch the Community Engaged Learning course. So over to the video now and Minister O'Brien.
Hello, it's a pleasure to support the launch of the Campus Engage online course for Community Engaged Learning. I understand there's a very high level of interest in the course across the sector, with I think over 400 people registered for the event. Kate in the IUA has informed me that the course has been developed by college staff with community-based organisations such as Enable Ireland, Pavy Point, Tidy Towns, Crumlin Children's Hospital and many more. So thank you very much for that collaboration, cooperation, and good luck with today's event. Thank you.
Never before has student community engagement been so important. Community engaged learning through the curriculum gives students a sense of purpose in society. It brings teaching staff, students and community partners together to think about and work on issues of collective concern. And it teaches students about teamwork and enhances their social capital for the future.
Community-based learning for me is learning about real problems and how to solve them in a real-world setting. So students meet with us as a community partner, we share with them what our particular challenge is, and we work together to hopefully solve that problem.
The first piece of advice I give to any academic thinking about doing this is do it, because the benefits are tremendous. It seems daunting at first, but afterwards you gain so much. Secondly, prepare yourself really well. Learn about your partners. Make sure you really understand their challenges and their lives.
This isn't a module where the lecturer just stands there and you take notes. It's very action orientated. So know that you're in control of this ship. You can control the outcomes. You can get as much out of it as you put in. So the more you put in, the more you're going to reap the rewards.
From my experience, community engaged learning gives students the perfect opportunity to understand the causes and effects of social exclusion. It also enables students to better understand their role in addressing societal challenges through academic endeavour or in the workplace.
You get to engage with other students and local communities you may just temporarily live in. I got to know Limerick from a different perspective than other international students would probably get to know it, because I've seen places that none of my Erasmus friends had ever been to or would actually know of.
I'm delighted that the National Forum has been able to partner with Campus Engage to develop this new course as one of the National Forum's suite of professional development open courses. This unique course helps staff to explore how they can help their students to bring their learning to life and to make those connections between in-class discussions and real-life activities and settings.
Wonderful. I think that short video gives a good foundation as to the importance of this online learning opportunity and the importance of this pedagogy within the context of Ireland and exploring real world issues in the classroom and external context. I'm now going to introduce our panel. Absolutely delighted to have such a diverse range of people all committed to community engaged learning. And I've asked them each to give a little wave once I've given an overview of their short biography. First of all, Dr. Claire MacDonald. She's a lecturer at the Technological University Dublin, assistant head of the School of Chemical and Pharmaceutical Sciences, and was one of the content developers and builders of this course. So you're very welcome, Claire. Then over to Gordon Rumley. Gordon is a first-year PhD student at UCC and heavily involved in UCC's Family Law Clinic. Gordon is very experienced in community engaged learning and has been long interested in making the law more accessible to the public, along with shaping the law to fit the needs of those who governs. So you're very welcome, Gordon. Siobhan Long is the National Manager with Enable Ireland, and she oversees the National Assistive Technology and Seed Tech Services. Siobhan has partnered extensively with staff and students from the Technological University in Dublin, particularly in the area of product design, and these collaborations were born of a need to develop better products to meet the daily living needs of people with disabilities. You're very welcome, Siobhan. And then finally, our final panelist is Dr. Jamie Goggins, and Jamie is a senior lecturer at NUI Galway, Director of Research and Innovation at the School of Engineering. And Jamie has well over a decade of experience in developing and teaching community engaged courses, connecting hundreds and hundreds of students to community partners and real world issues every year. So my first question is to you, Claire, just to contextualize the course. As one of the course developers, can you tell us a little bit more about this online course? For example, what's included in the content? How is the course structured and assessed?
Sure, Lorraine. Maybe the first thing to say is the target audience. There are people who would like to find out more about how to integrate community engaged learning into a teaching curriculum. And that would involve the basic concepts and the practical steps. Then to say a little bit about the format. It's similar to the other CPD online opportunities that are available that are associated with the National Forum that Terry already mentioned. So what that means is there are 25 hours of learner effort, and that's across 6 weeks. So that means you need to set aside about 4 or 5 hours a week, and each week will have a different focus. So for week 1, it's the introduction to community engaged learning. Week 2, we look at community partnerships, which are essential if you're going to have effective community engaged learning. Week 3, we look at embedding community engaged learning into the curriculum. So decisions like, will you have a standalone module? Will you take a module that you already have and modify it? And also how to write relevant learning outcomes. Week 4, we look at engaging students. And that's incredibly important to bring them with you and that they understand what they need to do, what's expected of them. And week 5 then is looking at how you would assess a community engaged learning activity, which again is going to be a little bit different to your traditional approaches. And then finally, week 6, we just wrap everything up and everybody involved will work towards claiming their digital badge and just drawing everything together that they've done. So maybe then I could just tell you a little bit about what's involved week to week in the assessment as well. So participants are supported by course facilitators. There's 2 of those. And there'll be a weekly webinar that's a review, and that'll last less than an hour, and that's included in the learning hours. And there's an online platform that has video tutorials and some how-to guides and some suggested further reading, and that's for each week. And you're asked to work through a number of short individual activities, but you also work on a group activity that's related to those as well. And those group activities are carried out by a group of 3, and that's known as a peer triad. And again, that's something that's quite unique to these National Forum online courses. And you'll work with the same triad throughout the course. So you get to know these people pretty well. And then at the end, each triad member will confirm to the facilitators that the other people in their group have met the criteria for the badge.
Fantastic. So it's great to see that while it's online and remote, there's also a social element in terms of developing a relationship with your triad. Claire, what are the benefits for potential participants or learners in terms of engaging with this online course?
So as I mentioned, they get to learn about the fundamental concepts of community engaged learning, and they'll be guided to develop a plan that's specific to their context, and it'll allow them to plan to establish effective community partnerships, again, in their context. So the course materials have been designed so that there's a range of case studies and examples from across disciplines, and that means that people will be able to draw from lots of examples that will be relevant to them. And as we mentioned, you'll be working in collaboration with peers, and that provides motivation and adds richness to the learning when you're working in the triad. I think we've already highlighted the benefits to students. Just from my perspective, I'd add that it allows students to gain experience of working on real world problems, to learn from the community partners, and to develop many transferable skills, as well as their awareness of civic engagement and social capital. And then finally, from the perspective of a lecturer, I would reiterate what was said in the video, just do it. It's very satisfying and motivating in my experience to develop and implement community engaged learning activities. And finally, from the perspective of policy, civic and community engagement are important remits of our higher education institutions, and they're within one of the 6 system objectives of the current HEA Performance Compact.
Fantastic, Claire. Thank you so much. And I just see in the chat box that we have an international guest asking, is this an offering that we're giving to people outside of Ireland? I think for the moment, we're going to just run this for a national audience in the first reiteration, and then after that, world domination.
Yeah, I think that's the way we'll do it, Lorraine, one step at a time, but there's no reason why it couldn't become international.
Fantastic, thanks, Claire. Gordon, you're a very impressive person. I have to say, I've read your biography with huge interest, and obviously a very successful learner now with you in your first year of your PhD. I'm just wondering, could you briefly first describe what is the Family Law Clinic and how you became involved in it as a student?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much for inviting me to be here today, Lorraine. I'm really happy to be able to speak to you all. So the Family Law Clinic gives master's students in UCC the opportunity to participate in litigation and law reform activities for organisations such as the National Women's Council of Ireland and the Irish Legal Aid Board. So to do this, it requires students to engage with the community need for a greater understanding of the law. And this gives rise to an enhanced knowledge and understanding of the law in action. So to achieve this aim, we carry out a range of activities, such as participating in research projects on behalf of civic organisations, and as well as engaging in roundtable discussions with guest lecturers. A further aim of the project is that we contribute to making the law more accessible via the Family Law Information website. And one of my primary reasons for actually getting involved in the clinic from the outset stemmed from the fact that I didn't have a background in law. So I realised that by participating in a community engaged learning module, my knowledge of various statutes and legislation would be far less relevant than my ability to work as part of a team and in order to form a well-rounded insight on a matter of interest. And while that might have been my reason for initially getting involved in the clinic, it was seeing how the work we carried out affected people was that caused me to maintain participation in it.
And do you feel that community engaged learning and your work with the clinic has helped you academically as well as socially, and maybe why, Gordon?
Unquestionably. Up until my master's, a lot of the education I would have received would have been information driven. So it would have been about just retaining various pieces of information. Whereas community engaged learning changed that entirely. So from participating in research and reporting on topics for community organizations, you very quickly realize that the right answer always isn't out there. You have to go out, collect what information you can, take it all into consideration, and then back yourself to present an opinion on that topic of research. And that type of work is directly applicable to what I'm doing now in my PhD, but as well as if I was to go into legal practice directly. So ultimately, this form of learning enables you to bridge the gap between academia and practice, and that gives rise to an enhanced knowledge and understanding of the law in action.
Fantastic. And what would your advice be to academics or lecturers? Why should they embed this teaching and learning approach within their own curriculum?
Well, in my opinion, one of the most challenging aspects you'd encounter as a lecturer or teacher is demonstrating to students the value in what they're actually learning. So we commonly try and motivate students by providing them with good grades to progress to the next stage of learning. But community engaged learning changes this reward system entirely. So no longer was I motivated to achieve a certain grade. Rather, I was working so that I could produce work which would genuinely help people. Mm. So one of the most rewarding parts of the clinic was actually hearing a solicitor discuss the research we had conducted pan out in the actual case. And receiving that feedback was by far and away the most impactful piece of feedback I'd received over my education so far. And it really pushed me to engage in a future that rewarded the wider community. So ultimately, I think it gives students a perspective as to what their career choice entails in practice, enabling them to make more informed choices about their next step post-graduation.
Gordon, that's fantastic, and it's a lovely sentiment and kind of the generosity of knowledge, or what some of us might call democratization of knowledge and sharing knowledge beyond the confines of campus, and accessing new knowledge that exists within the community as well, and bringing that into academia. So listen, thank you so much for your perspectives, very valuable insights. And we're also joined by Siobhan, our community partner from Enable Ireland. And Siobhan, you've a wealth of experience in terms of partnering with higher education institutions. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of that given your role with Enable Ireland, and why you feel it is important to engage with students as well as academics, I guess.
Sorry. Thank you, Lorraine. It's great to be part of today's session. I've worked in partnership with what was DIT, now Technological University Dublin, since 2007, in fact. I work with Enable Ireland, and we're a disability service provider. We provide services to over 5,000 children and adults across Ireland. And back in 2007, I approached DIT at the time with a very tentative question, really, and that was, could they help us by designing tools or devices or other solutions to assist the men and women who use our service to live more independently? Could they create products that were not available on the market at that time? And there were a whole range of challenges that we put to them based on conversations we were having with the men and women using our services. And really, the reason we did that was because we believed that access to assistive technology is not a health issue, which is how it is treated largely in Ireland. It's a human rights issue. Our second reason for contacting DIT at the time was that we also felt that we wanted to have a role in influencing the next generations of product designers around the concepts of universal design and how they actually apply in the real world. And since then, we've had the establishment of a community design challenge where product design students work in partnership with adults with disabilities to address their daily living needs in a kind of competitive, friendly competitive environment. We've had a PhD student undertake a participatory design doctorate in partnership with the men and women using our services. And we've been invited by Collins Barracks to create an exhibition of assistive technology through the decades. And then it became a three-way partnership between TU Dublin, Purdue University in the States, and ourselves. And then I suppose the pinnacle for me was to see how the experience of working with TU Dublin led to a really observable and tangible increase in self-esteem among the collaborators from Enable Ireland, with the result that we actually launched an advocacy and assistive technology summer school in TU Dublin for those men and women. So no longer were they simply participants from a community partner agency, they were actually actively working with TU Dublin. So it's been a great, continually evolving experience.
Fantastic, and I think there's so many unanticipated positive outcomes as a result of these kind of community engaged learning partnerships. And I can just see it when you talk, Siobhan, that this has been successful. And based on that, in your opinion, what are the key features or ingredients to a successful and sustainable partnership? Like, you know, we don't want just 1 year, one community partner and to lose that partnership. So how do you sustain a partnership?
Thanks, Lorraine. I think it's really something that builds over time, and it's about building trust between the key contact in a particular course and the community partner, and vice versa. And in my experience, what that has involved is a willingness to take risks because we didn't have a roadmap, and sometimes not necessarily knowing where something is going to end up. So not having that clear end point sometimes actually helps with the creativity of thinking that goes into these projects. I also am a big fan of multi-year projects. It's not just an academic exercise. For the community partner, we need to see real and tangible outcomes, and sometimes that will take a number of years. So I think multi-year projects are great. A sense of adventure helps. That helps with the evolution. And I think willingness as well to tackle the hiccups when they arise, and they unquestionably will if it's a partnership that's robust and has meaning. We've got to be able to navigate our way through the peaks and troughs of a working relationship, and while that isn't always easy, the rewards are enormous.
Fantastic, and I know that some scholars talk about community university partnerships as akin to romantic relationships. and that the characteristics involved in a romantic relationship are the very same involved in a community university partnership in terms of open communication and being kind to each other and so forth. So Siobhan, thank you so much for your words of wisdom there in terms of developing partnerships. Jamie, can I turn to you now as somebody who's very experienced and who's also contributed hugely to this online resource? Can I ask you, why is community engaged learning an important teaching and learning approach within higher education? Because I guess it takes much more work than traditional teaching.
It does, Lorraine, takes more work, I'd say, as an upfront investment, but over time, the 5 credit module that I have run for a number of years here is actually lower resource time for me as you develop it over time. So at the beginning, there's a lot of investment, but actually over time, then it becomes less investment. But I suppose from the higher level, from, you know, why would the university or the IoT get involved in it? Well, like we've heard from Siobhan, you know, about the benefits to the students of working in partnership with civic and civil society organisations to act on local societal challenges. And like if we think about our universities or IoTs, we're here for the public good. We're publicly funded in there, so we need to give back. We need to help to try and tackle some of these societal challenges that are there. So if we ask our students to complete community engaged projects for academic credit, then both the students and the university are giving back to our local communities by tackling these challenges. Like in some instances from our experiences, in some instances the community partner will have the knowledge and the skills to tackle the problems that they're looking to tackle, but they don't have the bandwidth to tackle them. They're so busy, you know, on the front line trying to get the work done. But then in other instances, our community partners, they know what they want, they know what the outcome they want, but they don't necessarily have the technical skills to get there, and they don't have the finances to pay for professionals to go and do it with them. So, like I'm in the School of Engineering here, and one of the modules that I facilitate is in building engineering. So the students will identify real needs in the community and try and fulfill that real need in there. So that could be dampness in the building, accessibility problems, you know, improving the layouts of the building, making it more energy efficient, and so on. And most of our community partners don't know how to solve the technical problems, and know they want to have a better building for their clients and so on in there. And so the students will write a report and help to identify those issues. And actually, most of our community partners will use those reports. If I kind of focus on the students, I suppose we've facilitated over 300 projects here, myself and my colleague, Dr. Magdalena Hadjikevich, in there. And we've asked the students each year for feedback, after community partners for feedback. And the feedback we're getting and the evidence that we've collected is that, you know, by creating a community engaged learning, the students' energy and learning kind of a, you know, positive impact obviously in the community partner, but also on themselves in terms of putting real world context into their learning, giving themselves a pride and satisfaction of the knowledge that their work is helping the communities, the ownership of their own learning, because we get the students to come up with their own learning outcomes in there to identify the real needs of the community partners and find a community partner as well. But I suppose, you know, we have to train our students to be professional engineers, and it's really difficult, you know, to teach them about ethics or even teamwork, communication, and so on. But if you put them into the real world context, having to work on a real project with real people that are relying on them, then those really come true in terms of their learning and that, rather than doing this abstractly.
Fantastic, Jamie. And Jamie, pitfalls in terms of this kind of teaching and learning approach. We never like to talk about the negatives, but you know, this is life, and you know, what are the potential pitfalls, and maybe how do you mitigate against pitfalls that may occur?
Yeah, I'd say number one is dealing with expectations from community partners, from students, from colleagues, and so on, and, you know, trying to encourage other colleagues to get involved in this type of work. So sitting down with a cup of tea or online now with community partners initially, understanding what they really want, and then for them to understand what we can offer. And so our students are already just starting their second year, or no, sorry, halfway through second year of the undergraduate, so don't have a lot of the kind of more advanced subjects done at that stage. But like from the beginning, some community partners were kind of talking about fundraising and so on, and we're saying, no, this is, you know, academic credit. They need to apply their academic knowledge, and then they understood the the kind of level they want to work on, the context of what their background is, and so on. And so that was hugely important. The expectations from the students as well. I mean, students can be very heavy critics of ours sometimes, but also students are the best resource that the university have. We actually underutilize our students when we see the ratio of students to staff, when we see the ratio of students in a city like Galway, 20,000 students or so for 60,000 or 80,000 euro population, or 80,000 people population in there. So like, if you empower the students, it's fantastic what they can do. I'd say take the time to build up the relations with the community partners, really understand what they want. And we had some very good partners at the beginning where we spent time getting projects that they really wanted. And then we asked students to identify their own projects as well. And it turns out over the years that most of the students now will find their own projects in there, because they've kind of looked at previous projects, looked at the type of projects and said, oh, I could do that with my local GA club, or I could do that with my with a local organization, and so on. And so there's actually a lot less upfront time on us there. Like I started off, I had 130 students to deal with, to go on community to these partners. That was 60 or so projects. Why did I bother doing it? And this pitfall, we are putting the university or your IATs at a bit of a risk in terms of they are going out into the real world, they're providing some advice to partners and so on. But we have a disclaimer there, so it's important to put that in the reports. The university covers us in terms of the insurance. Make sure you contact your insurance company to make sure that the students are covered when they're out in the field and so on. But like, I inherited a module, and there was 60 or 70 reports stacked up in the office I took over in there, and I started flicking through them, and I was like, oh geez. So it was like kind of, oh, another one, copy and paste off the internet, another one, nothing in context and so on. I said, this is going to be awful listening to these presentations and reading these reports afterwards. And so by putting it into real world context, reading the reports, it's very interesting for me. I learn loads about things in context, but also technical stuff and so on in there. So I get an awful lot back by reports, by listening to the presentations from the students. So it's not just the community partners, it's not just the students, but also the academic as well. We'll get more back as well from it.
Jamie, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think sometimes we forget to say how much academics or lecturers or staff can grow from the experience of community engaged learning, as well as our students and hopefully community partners. Jamie, thanks so much, and thanks to all our panelists. I suppose we could have spent another 90 minutes there maybe engaging with you all, but I know there's some lovely comments coming up on the chat box there, picking up on very useful insights given by Gordon, Claire, Siobhan and Jamie. But maybe now we'll move over to our final speaker, and that's Dr. Terry MAGUIRE. Terry is Director of the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning. They were, of course, a partner of Campus Engage in terms of this particular project. Prior to taking up this role as director, Terry had held the role of Head of Lifelong Learning at the then Institute of Technology Tallaght for 8 years, and she worked extremely closely with the community in Tallaght there on a range of community initiatives. So thank you, Terry, and over to you.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, Lorraine, thank you for the intro, and I have to say that community engaged learning is near and dear to my heart. So I was delighted to be able to partner with Campus Engage to be able to develop this course. Let me just tell you first a little bit about the open courses. In early 2017, I remember we got a number of development groups ready or together from across the sector. And we said to them that we wanted to develop these accessible professional development opportunities for staff. We've done an awful lot of work, and the kinds of professional development that was available across the sector were accredited programs, which staff felt often had a lot of, there was an awful lot of time needed to be committed to them, or there was sort of short workshop programs, which were lovely to go to, but the feedback was they didn't change practice. So we worked with these development teams, and we said, well, how much time would somebody need to be able to spend on a particular topic to enable them to actually have sustainable change in their practice afterwards? And we talked around it, and we said, well, 25 hours was what we came up with. And I think we've hit it. All our experience since the open courses have been developed is that's pretty right, especially if our courses are very practice orientated. It's about taking what we're learning in the courses and making a change in our practice that we'll be able to build on when the course finished. So I say to all of you, the 25 hours isn't that long. And afterwards, you've done an awful lot of the work about integrating, in this case, community engaged learning into your practice. At the time, I remember one of the development teams said, what are these digital badges that everybody's going to get? Because they weren't something that people had thought about a lot before. But what we wanted to do was to ensure that if somebody committed 25 hours of their time, that they would get recognition for doing that and for making that commitment. And that recognition is provided through a National Forum digital badge, which in the Campus Engage situation is a partnership badge with them. We've now a suite of nearly 20 open courses developed. One of the things we're I suppose focusing on in this last 18 months is that we've been going back to those original development teams. And we're saying to them, we'd like to have these courses available, not just in face-to-face mode, we want them to be available in online mode. And we want, if I'm just interested in community engaged learning and I just want to read about it, to have some sort of a self-study version that people might be able to access. So we're trying with all of our open courses now to develop them in those 3 modes to have them available to staff. Campus Engages is only one of our partners. We've partnered with QQI and did a program on the recognition of prior learning. We're partnered with AHEAD, and we've done a program on universal design of learning. And using AHEAD as our partners this year, we're piloting a really big dissemination process. We currently have over 700 staff completing a UDL badge online across the sector. And we're hoping to run out that form of dissemination with all our other badges as they develop. So I'll be delighted to hopefully with so many people joining the launch today, I think we'll need something like that to be able to push out the Campus Engage badge in its 2nd or 3rd iteration. In terms of the actual community engaged learning itself, when we consulted our students were very clear. They want their learning to be situated in real life. And campus community engaged learning enables us to do that like nothing else. And I agree with you, Jamie, it gives experiences, and to Gordon, it gives experiences the students wouldn't have otherwise. I would then encourage everyone to please take the first step in integrating community engaged learning into your practice. Register for the course. And you're going to learn so much by not just by engaging with the content, but all our feedback from our courses has been, it's the talks that you have with staff across different institutions that are interested in the same topic. A talk to people that you probably won't meet in person, but that whole triad system, that whole discussion piece that's built into these courses means that you'll develop lots of friends, lots of contacts, and learn an awful lot more than just the content of the course. So I'd encourage everybody to sign up, and I look forward to the first iteration of the course in the spring. Thank you, Lorraine.
Terry, thank you so much. And there's some lovely comments coming in on the chat box. What's come up a few times is COVID-19 and self-isolation. And of course, courses like this are so necessary in this period of isolation, but also the pedagogy community engaged learning requires contact and relationships with people. So perhaps we should see this quiet period of us all being at home as a moment to prepare for another future when we can interact and socialize again and get the skill set and the wherewithal to enhance the curriculum so that we can engage in partnerships with community. But I guess engage, there's no reason why we can't engage in partnerships online for the moment as well. Can I thank everybody for attending today and for everybody who contributed to this launch, our video presenters, our panel, Campus Engage, the National Forum. I'd like to thank the Campus Engage Community Engaged Working Group, and in particular to those who took the primary content building responsibilities, including Josephine Boland, Bernie Quinlivan, Claire MacDonald, Colin O'Hare, our learning technology partner, Maureen Murray from Digital Doodle, who helped translate our knowledge to an online platform, Kate Morris, Leo Sullivan, and Kate Woods for their technical and social support today in terms of this webinar. This webinar has been recorded. It will be available online at a later stage, so please encourage your colleagues who have an interest in this type of teaching and learning approach to log in and look at it later. And as I mentioned at the start, please contact Colin O'Hare at Campus Engage for further information and for sign-up details. So thank you all for attending, and I wish you all a wonderful afternoon. Take care.